All right, let's jump right into this explainer. Picture this. It's the dead of winter, 1975, in the Chinese city of Haicheng. Suddenly, hundreds of snakes are abruptly waking up and slithering out of their hibernation way early. It makes absolutely no sense until a devastating 7.3 magnitude earthquake strikes the city shortly after. Now, this isn't just some crazy, isolated anecdote. It's actually part of a massive, long-documented mystery of animals seemingly reacting to disasters before they ever happen. So today, we're going to take a close look at nature's 10 early warning signs.
Which brings us to a really fascinating question, right? Do animals actually possess some kind of psychic, supernatural sixth sense for disaster? Or is this whole phenomenon grounded entirely in hard biology and physics? Sensory systems that just totally outpace human perception. We are going to dig into the data today to find out exactly how these creatures might be beating our modern technology to the punch.
Humans have actually been documenting these weird behaviors for centuries. Way back in 373 BC, the historian Thucydides wrote about rats, weasels, and snakes completely deserting the city of Hellice in ancient Greece right before a massive quake. Fast forward to that 1975 earthquake in Haicheng, China, and then up to 2011, where pet owners in Japan reported wild, frantic behavior in their dogs and cats just before the catastrophic Tohoku earthquake. The historical record is just packed with these accounts.
So here is our roadmap for today. We'll be looking at 1. Sensing the storm. 2. Infrasound navigators. 3. The medical marvel. 4. The earthquake enigma. 5. The science of senses. And finally, 6. The future of forecasting. Starting off with Section 1, Sensing the Storm, the barometric forecasters.
So what connects four totally distinct species, ants, honeybees, freshwater fish, and flamingos? Well, it's not magic, it's barometric pressure. They're essentially nature's barometers. Ants will literally seal off their nest entrances before a heavy rainfall, and that's triggered by subtle shifts in humidity and air pressure. Honeybees, they'll return to the hive and just completely stop foraging long before storm clouds are even visible. Freshwater fish have a swim bladder that doubles as this highly sensitive pressure gauge, which causes them to swim really erratically when a storm is brewing. And flamingos have actually been documented completely evacuating coastal areas before a tropical cyclone hits. They are reacting to that dropping pressure days in advance. Absolutely wild.
Moving right along to Section 2, Infrasound navigators, steering clear of the core. Let's look at animals that can sense massive violent weather events like hurricanes and tornadoes from miles and miles away.
Okay, to really understand this, we need to talk about infrasound. Infrasound is this incredibly low-frequency sound generated by severe weather systems. It exists completely outside the range of human hearing. But for certain animals, it is basically a blaring siren, alerting them to danger days before it actually arrives.
Take black-tip sharks off the South Carolina coast, for example. They've been tracked moving out into deeper, much safer waters just before major hurricanes hit, directly correlating with sharp drops in barometric pressure. Or look at frigate birds. When equipped with GPS, they've been observed actively altering their flight paths to dodge the dangerous core of a developing hurricane. But honestly, perhaps the most famous example is the golden-winged warbler. In 2014, there was a study in Current Biology showing that these tiny little birds abruptly fled their nesting grounds in Tennessee, flying 400 miles away days before a massive tornado outbreak. They sensed the storm's infrasound, literally outpacing our own human weather forecasts.
Section 3, the medical marvel, sensing chemical shifts. Let's pivot from massive, miles-wide weather events to something much more intimate and close to home. It turns out some of our own pets are practically walking biological sensors. There are deeply documented cases and even formal training programs built entirely around dogs reliably alerting their owners to an oncoming epileptic seizure, minutes before it even happens. Researchers believe this is linked to a dog's incredibly acute sense of smell. They're able to detect these incredibly subtle, invisible scent changes in a person's body chemistry that precede a seizure, long before any physical symptoms become visible to us humans.
Next up, Section 4, the earthquake enigma, seismic mysteries. Now we're transitioning to what is easily the most hotly debated and deeply scrutinized category of early warning signs out there.
When it comes to documented seismic behaviors, the history is just fascinating. In Japan, there are historical records spanning back centuries that describe highly unusual catfish behavior before quakes. In 2009, researcher Rachel Grant observed a population of common toads completely abandon their breeding site in L'Aquila, Italy, just days before a major earthquake struck. And, like we touched on earlier,
A massive 2011 internet survey in Japan showed that about 18% of dog owners and 16% of cat owners noticed really unexpected, restless behavior in their pets shortly before the magnitude 9 Tohoku earthquake.
And here is one of the most compelling pieces of data from that 2011 Japanese quake. It involves automated milking records for Holstein dairy cows. In Ibaraki Prefecture, which was closest to the epicenter, the cows showed a very significant drop in milk production starting a full 6 days before the earthquake. Because researchers carefully controlled for temperature and humidity, they theorized this drop in milk yield might have actually been a physiological stress response to that impending seismic event.
All right, bringing us to Section 5. The science of senses, myth versus reality. This brings us to the real climax of our explainer. We need to step back for a second and examine the intense scientific debate around all this.
Because we really have to separate the pseudoscience from the biology. Over the years, people like Jim Birkeland have popularized pseudoscientific terms like earthquake sensitive, sort of suggesting people or animals get psychic impressions or mysterious visions. But the scientific reality is much more grounded and honestly much cooler. Animals don't have a paranormal sixth sense, they simply have these finely tuned sensory receptors that allow them to detect changes in pressure, chemicals, and vibrations that we humans simply cannot feel.
The absolute crucial piece of the puzzle here is understanding things like P waves. P waves, or primary waves, are fast-moving waves of seismic energy. They travel incredibly fast from the source of an earthquake, arriving seconds before the larger, highly destructive S waves. Now, humans usually can't feel P waves at all, but a dog or a cat with super sharp senses, they absolutely can. So when a dog freaks out 60 seconds before a quake, they aren't predicting the future. They are reacting to an earthquake that has technically already started. They're just sensing those fast P waves before the real destructive shaking hits us.
So, let's look at the rigorous scientific explanations for why animals might act strangely days before a quake. They could be reacting to much smaller foreshocks that we totally ignore. They might sense micro-changes in ground tilt, alterations in groundwater levels, or even the emission of radon gas from the Earth's crust. But we also have to account for human confirmation bias. Let's be real, sometimes a dog is just acting weird because it's a dog. But if an earthquake happens the next day, our brains retroactively link those two events, even if they had absolutely nothing to do with each other.
Now, to keep things balanced, we have to look at the strict scientific consensus. Following a major quake in Italy, the International Commission on Earthquake Forecasting put it pretty bluntly, stating there is no credible scientific evidence that animals display behaviors indicative of earthquake-related environmental disturbances that are unobservable by the physical and chemical sensor systems available to earthquake scientists. So ultimately, the scientific community agrees that while animals have incredible, mind-blowing senses, they just cannot be used as a reliable, reproducible early warning system for earthquakes days in advance.
Finally, Section 6, the future of forecasting, trusting tech or pets. Let's see how science is trying to merge these amazing biological mysteries with modern technology.
So, researchers definitely aren't giving up on this. Over in Germany, the Max Planck Institute is running something called the iCaris project. And it is wild. They are literally attaching tiny transmitters to a massive variety of animals and tracking their movements all the way from space. By building this giant, public online database of animal behavior, scientists hope to finally gather the precise, large-scale data needed to see if the collective movements of animals can genuinely act as a global disaster prediction network. Which really leaves us with this one final thought. As our technology gets more and more advanced, pushing the absolute limits of satellite tracking and artificial intelligence, will the ultimate key to predicting natural disasters come from a multi-billion-dollar satellite system? Or should we just be paying closer attention to the dog napping on the rug? Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep observing the world around you, and I will catch you in the next one.